And thanks for joining us. One of our listeners just texted and said, I don't see the show. I don't know what to say because we're on, we're up, we're producing, and it shows you that we're online, right? So hopefully others will be able to find us. You can post to your friends if you would. Text out to your friends if they want to join in the conversation. We are on Webcast One Live, webcastonelive.com, each Wednesday at 10 a.m. And to be fair with you, next Wednesday I am out of town, but I will have guests. We are coming into the studio today and do some pre-taping. And one of my guests, his name is Kiboko. Have you ever met Kiboko, Ryan? Kiboko is from the Congo, and he will be sharing a story with us. In America, we just don't get it. We have forgotten the fight that our ancestors had in giving us the freedom and liberties that we enjoy. Our rights are endowed by our Creator, this is correct, but China has the same rights we do. They just don't get to express them and enjoy them because their government doesn't protect them. Our government is supposed to protect them. We're losing them. We're allowing them to go away voluntarily, which just is unfathomable to me. I just don't understand it. But we have liberties and freedoms that don't allow us to even understand what other countries go through. So my guest will be sharing. His brother is a political prisoner right now in Congo. So we'll be talking to him, and that will be the guest next week. And we'll also be talking a little bit about the events coming up with Dr. Alveda King on Martin Luther King Day, 6 p.m. at the North High School. And then there's a luncheon the next day for pastors at 11:30 a.m. And we are toying with the idea. We wanted to do a breakfast early in the morning, and we've been waiting on the legislature to give us the times that she would speak, and we're kind of hamstrung, to be honest with you, on a couple of different issues there. So we'll get back to you on that the more information we get. All right. I want to get to the topic. Ryan's almost laughing at me today. There's so many things happening. I could be a little scattered today. That might be a polite way to say it. A little scattered. There's so many things coming at us. But let's talk this testing under fire. Testing under fire. The article. And one of the things I wanted to get to you, this goes back what they're talking about, No Child Left Behind, but I'm telling you it is that much heavier, that much more cemented in with Common Core. And in one of the paragraphs in this article, Oklahoma, first grade teacher sent a letter home this November to parents claiming that they spend 288 instructional hours on required test. 288 instructional hours on required test, or 72 days. So in your first grade classroom, rather than learning their math, their handwriting, which we're not even sure they really get good, thorough instruction in penmanship or handwriting anymore, 72 hours or 72 days a year of your school year are tied up in assessing your students, according to this first grade teacher out of Oklahoma. And we ask why schools are failing. My guest is joining me on the phone, Morna McDormett. Thank you for joining in the discussion today on testing and opting out.
Thank you so much for having me.
First, tell our listeners and our viewers where you come from. I don't even know what state you're in.
I'm in Maryland, and your listeners are going to laugh at this. I needed an extra 15 minutes to return home to the phone because we had a 2-hour school delay because there were 3 inches of snow on the ground. So I'm sure in Iowa that's the equivalent of July. But here in Maryland, that makes schools open 2 hours late. But otherwise, it's a lovely state.
Well, thank you and welcome on. And yes, the Iowa listeners totally understand what you're dealing with. I think we had several schools canceled today.
Wow,
because of
really
because of the wind chill.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not even sure how cold the wind chill is. I'm not sure I want to know, but it's cold.
We're at 8 degrees.
Are you Ryan? Do you know what we are? He's looking it up. He'll tell us in just a minute. And I think with the wind chill, somebody said like 15 below or something.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, It's cold. You're just thrilled when your car starts. And you just, when your mom used to tell you, make sure you have your mittens and your gloves and your earmuffs. I'm telling my kids, make sure you have a sleeping bag and another set of mittens and food.
Wow, yeah. Yeah.
So, no, thank you. And first off, your first priority is your kids. So didn't mind a
Absolutely.
bit waiting for your kids. It's why we do what we do is for all of us. I think with all the differences across ethnic lines, socioeconomical lines, religious lines, I think even across countries, different countries in the world, I think most people want what is best for their kids, with few
Absolutely.
exceptions.
Absolutely, and that's why we're fighting corporate reform because, I fought it for 15 years as an educator and for the last 9 also as a parent, and it's amazing how much it's changed the stakes once I had my own children.
So you were an educator for 15 years.
I still am currently an educator. I was a K-12 special educator and regular educator for about 12 of those, and then I went back to school and did my PhD in curriculum and assessment. And I've been an associate professor. Well, I haven't been that for 12 years, but I've been a professor for 15 years at various institutions, working in College of Education and preparing beginning teachers.
Wonderful. So you are well qualified to talk about testing and assessments.
More qualified than the people that seem to be running the show, but I think most of us are more qualified than the people running the show. So.
Isn't that the case with a lot of things that we deal with in government?
Unbelievable.
And so, okay, and here's the other thing. We're trying to get information out to parents, and most parents are just now hearing words like the Common Core or SBAC, Smarter Balanced Assessment Consortium, or PARC, Parents, Partners in Assessment for Readiness for College and Career. And so they feel so lost, but here's the deal. This came in not through your legislators or voted on by like most of those large political policy issues that should be through the legislative branch or through your local school board. This came in privately and through a lot of governors signing on in a chase for money in the race to the top. And we bypassed those normal stop gates we go through. And two, media-wise, I don't know how you ever believe anything you read in the media, because I've been quoted so many times lately, and it wasn't the conversation I had with the reporter, or it was a slant of the conversation I had with the reporter. So I don't know how we get information to people other than when they finally get ticked off enough, they start looking for it online, and you will find a bevy of information, one of those being UnitedOptOut.com. UnitedOptOut.com. And Morna, tell us a little bit about that website, and then I want to come back to this article.
Sure. United Opt-Out is a group that formed in 2011, in the August of 2011, and there were 6 of us. And some of our original organizers have changed positions. Some people have stepped down, and we've had new people step up. So now there's 7 of us all together, and Peggy Robertson really was the one who came up with the idea for it and reached out to the other 6 of us, or 5 of us at the time, and said, I want to create a Facebook site that helps parents know how to refuse or opt out of high-stakes standardized testing. Are you interested? And so all this, said, yeah, sure, sounds great. We had no idea how big this was going to become. At least I didn't. I was like, oh, sure, like a little hobby. I'll do that on the side. I've always been opposed to standardized testing. This is right up my alley. And this whole world opened up of parents and of legislation and, corporate government backroom deals and this ugly, side of what was really, really going on with policy and legislation. So what our website aims to do is provide free of charge to all parents all the research that we can muster so that they are armed with the most amount of information to fight back. And some of that is just increasing awareness, right? Just talking to other parents or talking to teachers, talking to members of your community, all the way up to, here's how you refuse the tests in your state. So there are varying degrees of refusal for all varying levels of interest or ability to participate.
Okay, I'm going to come back to this article just to give people some background. New York, last spring, 17,000 members on their Facebook page of opting out. They created a Facebook page to opt out. 17,000 members. As many as 60,000 students refused to take the test in New York. In Florida, Cindy Hamilton went on a similar crusade with the launch of Opt Out Orlando. Members of that group are talking with state lawmakers, urging them to consider testing in the upcoming legislative session. Said she has helped launch over 24 more opt-out groups. It is certainly a growing movement. I have interviewed Kathleen Jasper out of Florida. I have interviewed Meg Norris, who is a teacher who resigned over the whole testing issue in Common Core because she saw the destructive, what it was doing to her students. We've seen the video, and I should have pulled that up for today. The teacher explaining how the student was stabbing himself with a pencil because the testing was so frustrating to him. So, Morna, I am pleased to see the movement growing, but you say you were always against standardized testing. Why?
Because particularly high-stakes standardized testing. The high-stakes nature of it makes it punitive to teachers, to children, to districts, oftentimes for test scores that are the result of things that go far beyond the student-teacher relationship, right? We could talk ad infinitum about the role of poverty and family and all these other factors that go into how well a child may or may not do on a standardized test. So making it high stakes automatically is problematic. Standardized testing is problematic if you go back into the history, and I won't talk about it very long, but really the origins of standardized testing go back to the eugenics movement in the early 1900s, at a time in which we thought that we could, by race and culture, and also gender and social class, determine who was fit to perform what tasks, and that we could use a standardized test in order to do that. So it's never... When people say we have a better standardized test, I'm always thinking there's no such thing. There really is no such thing as a qualitatively meaningful, student-centered standardized test. By its nature, it's faulty and it's questionable and harmful. So when we go from using it as a snapshot, like we did in the 1970s and 1980s, just getting a sense of how different states or districts were doing, and it was called the NAEP or the Iowa, appropriately. When you and I were children, we maybe sat down 3 times over the course of our entire schooling and took a test, and that was it. And you didn't know why you took it, you just took it, and then you were done. And we've gone from that snapshot to draining children intellectually, emotionally, and physically, and schools financially of all of their resources in order to test them even more so. So during No Child Left Behind, that was the first time that we'd ever implemented really on a national level high-stakes standardized testing. And that came in around Goals 2000, 2001. And since that wasn't bad enough, we decided to ramp it up a couple more notches and call it Race to the Top and make it even worse. So it's decades old in its origins. It's just that we keep making it worse rather than better. And I think the reason why the pushback has increased exponentially over the last couple of years is because it's gone from being unjust and unfair to all children and largely unfair to other communities to being just unacceptable completely. They've made it so bad that it's just completely unacceptable across the board.
Okay, there's so many points here I want to talk to, and thank you. That was a terrific explanation. First off, I'm stymied. I would not have guessed that this would have come back to the eugenics movement of the early 1900s, but it makes perfect sense. We have seen it. We hear that, an Einstein will not make it under Common Core. A child who has a genius in one area but not in another area will be limited by this new testing and Common Core mentality that is in schools. Do you agree with that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's as bad as it always was. What's worse is the frequency, the duration, the cost, the involvement of people who have no business being, in the classroom. All of those things have made it worse. So when we ramped up the high stakes, when we went from it being a NAEP snapshot of how different children are doing back in the 70s and 80s to a policy in which if a school does not perform at a certain cutoff score, those schools get closed, or those children will be retained, or they will not graduate. When you've added, or the teachers will lose their jobs. When you've added these real life or not life or death, but make or break stakes to the test, you've increased the stress of it to children exponentially as well. The other issues associated with it is the cost of the test.
Okay, hold on before we go to the cost, and write that down because I want to come back to the cost.
Sure.
But you just mentioned, several of these make or break situations, schools being closed, and the thing is, we've lost local control. This is what people don't understand. We're talking Common Core, federal program. People may tell you, like they are in Iowa Corps, that you have local control. You will not have local control. You will have local compliance.
Yes.
Meaning you will have the opportunity to pick whatever color textbook you want or whatever maker of textbook you want, but it will still have to have the information on the test because otherwise your students will not test well. And they tell you can pick extra or you can teach something that's not listed. Yes, you can, but only, 15%? Because it will not be included on the test either. So someone else outside your state now has control. You no longer have local control. And when we're talking, Morna, about closing schools, that will not be a local controlled decision.
No, not at all. Not at all. I mean, when people debate about things like Common Core and fuzzy math, and we could debate about what's in the content of the core for hours. But sometimes I tell people, all right, well, but let's also zoom out and look at who wrote the core standards. They were largely from testing companies and private for-profit or quote-unquote nonprofit corporations. So Achieve, ACT, the College Board, those individuals from those locations are the ones that wrote the standards because they are intimately attached to the high-stakes standardized testing. You cannot detach them. And the goal of the Common Core is so that we have nationalized testing. And with nationalized testing, you can do any number of things. One, you can profit off of children much better. There's a document that I read where Pearson and some other published testing companies said that it's far more profitable for all states to have one or two tests. It's more profitable for them than for 50 states to have 50 tests, right? Because if you only have to, it lowers your labor costs and your development costs.
Sure.
So there's a boon to the testing companies for us to have nationalized testing.
It's exactly why we see the same house in a development. Once the contractor figures out from the specs how much it costs to build said house, you will see them build 5 or 10 houses, the exact same plan with maybe a shutter change or a door change or a deck on the back.
It's profitable to them. It's profitable to the online edutech companies. I don't know if that's the right word or not, but the education technology companies, the privately run corporations like Apollo Corporation, K-12 Inc., any organization that can deliver material, whether it's assessments, teacher preparation, curriculum, anything online. They have said over and over and over again that the market right now is hot because the monies that come from the state, local, and federal government, Race to the Top, and other avenues, is going right through our school districts like a sieve and going right into their pockets because Common Core and the new tests are all being delivered from these private companies. They're not locally developed by teachers or educational experts. They're provided from these companies. And so they got in on the act because they said there's a lot of money here to be made by providing these resources. So, this is all part and parcel of a privatization movement. And that's not the same thing as like understanding a free market, like, we're selling sneakers or selling houses or, building restaurants. This is literally handing public education, which belongs to us, over to the decision-making agenda of private companies that are being funded on this corporate welfare dole from the federal government. So they're in league together. And it really renders the rest of us powerless.
All right. So I want to come back to one of my other questions, NAEP. For anybody listening out there, what is NAEP?
Oh, God. It's NAEP. It's, I want to look, I always just call it, it's the National Report Card, the National Assessment of Education Progress.
I think, there you go.
Yes.
Okay.
And it used to be the snapshot that we would use to determine, how students in different states or districts were doing. And it is important to hold, schools accountable, especially in underserved communities. I support the idea that we are accountable to all children, and especially children living in lower income neighborhoods and places that have not historically been provided with adequate resources. But testing them as a way to make policymakers accountable seems really absurd to me. It's making all those children accountable to the testing company.
Okay, so the whole thing with testing, and this is just a side note, maybe you agree, maybe you don't, but for me, the whole thing with licensing, we see hairstylists, they have to be licensed. What it is to me is a taxation, a regulation of an industry. It's how we keep a limited number of people in a field so that the field doesn't become too large, or we don't. It becomes less competitive. We have these, and here's a great example. You have to be licensed to be a hairdresser, right? You have to have gone to school and passed your test and has there anybody out there who hasn't ever gotten a bad haircut? These are licensed people. We've all had a bad haircut. So this whole testing thing, I think it limits what someone could do. I think you could have people who could be great architects, people who could be in the law school thing, the whole way we do the whole law school. What if you just took the bar? What if you were smart enough to take the bar and you did an apprenticeship rather than wasting all the money on law school? What if there was a shorter, I'm getting off, but the whole college education thing that every degree takes 4 years. I don't understand that. But to me, I think that this is how we start shuffling kids down the pipeline where we want them to be. And in doing that, we greatly limit the giftings and the skills that a lot of kids would have that we will never now see. Right.
And what they're playing with the idea of individualized learning, which is what you're speaking to right now. And it's a very slippery slope when you go down that rabbit hole, because not all children learn the same way. We know children are not standardized, and standardized tests standardize our children. And if they don't fit the cookie cutter mold, they all get pushed to the side. And so the damage to creative learning, the damage to a joy of learning, the damage to a child's self-esteem. And a lot of people say, oh, well, suck it up. Everybody needs to take tests. And I'm like, yeah, that's fine. When I'm 18 and I took the SATs, that was fine. But that's not a justification to prepare them in kindergarten. Why don't I put my 7-year-old behind the wheel of a car so she can learn how to drive now? Because she's going to learn how to drive one day. It makes no sense to destroy meaningful, quality, love of learning, creative learning at a young age, because 10 years later they might take the SATs by choice, right? But the problem is when we talk about individualizing learning and online learning as a way to circumvent a standardized format for, like you said, preparing people for things, we also lose a lot because, again, the edutech companies come in and say, you don't need to take this history class. I'm going to deliver it to you all online. And now you've got a classroom of 25 children all sitting and staring at computers and not interacting and not engaging in, lots of hands-on and dialogue. And those companies that are delivering that curriculum to you are mining the data and the private information from our children for their own purposes. And that's another piece of the testing that's really important, is the data mining.
The data collection. We've talked about that on several shows. You're absolutely right. The data collection that will go to private entities, and we do not know whether it will be sold or not sold or how it will be used for marketing to profit private companies and sensitive information. Morna, this isn't just like your academic scores anymore. This is very invasive, personal, sensitive information.
Correct. I mean, one of the major players out there is a corporation called Newton, Knewton. They partner with Pearson and some other organizations, and they're one of the leading edutech companies that want to start delivering content online. And they partner with Common Core and all the other things, right? Because they saw the Common Core coming in and were like, yes, bandwagon, let's get on it. The CEO of Newton has said that they will have more information on children than all of the servers like Google and Amazon and Yahoo put together. They can tell you whether or not your child learns math better before or after breakfast. I don't want any company having that kind of information on my child, and I don't care if they delivered the tablets from Moses as a curriculum. I don't trust it, and I don't think it's appropriate.
I can hear somebody now saying to you, wouldn't it be helpful to you to know if your child was better to learn before breakfast? Wouldn't that be helpful to you? I can hear them saying it to you.
And I think a really good teacher knows that. I don't need a computer and some person that I don't even know on the other end of that computer from a corporation making that decision based on every keystroke of my child.
And I totally
know
agree.
how my child learns because of the look on their face, whether or not their shoulders slump, whether or not, the tone of their voice, their movements in the classroom. That's what good teachers know how to do. They don't need a computer software program to tell them that.
And my thought is, God gave me my children. The Bible tells me if I seek wisdom, he will be good to give it to me. And so for me, I will trust my, like you say, my instincts as a parent. And again, Ryan and I talked earlier in the show, one of the cities here in Iowa is they're outlawing sledding because kids are getting hurt. I'll do things the way I see fit. I am the authority of my child.
Right, correct. And I think that goes back to this notion of opting out, this testing refusal. I think it's a hot topic now because the testing is so much worse than it was 10 years ago, even though you could go back and see that this didn't start with any particular administration. It didn't start with any particular side of the aisle. It's corporate and federal government mating like a zombie and a vampire, right? And they've created this strange new beast that none of us really understands because it's not business as usual the way that we grew up understanding, I don't know, just the way the world works.
Okay.
So you've got this corporate and federal blending. And so you find, like the article that you were citing, these strange bedfellows. I mean, that's what it says, that you very rarely see these alliances from across the aisle where Jeb Bush and Barack Obama are on the same page with something. And likewise, there are people from the far left and people from the far right who are looking at this and saying, no, we didn't sign on for this.
That's right.
There are a lot of people who would consider themselves progressive even, who have been railing against standardized, nationalized curriculum for almost 20 years.
Okay, when we come back, we're going to go to a break. Thank our sponsors. When we come back, I want to go through your website.
Sure.
One of the tags on there is no federal penalty for opt-out. So make note, because I want to talk about, is there really not a penalty? People are concerned about their kids not getting scholarships, not being admitted to colleges. Can they really opt their kids out without repercussions? Two, and maybe the schools, is there a repercussion to the school when we have so many opt-outs? Then we'll kind of go through your website. You've got talking points on there. So we'll come back and talk along those lines when we come back. But I thank you. Morna McDormett is my guest. Morna, M-O-R-N-A, McDermott, M-C-D-E-R-M-O-T-T. Morna, can people contact you? Is there a way through your website? How do they contact you?
Yeah, I'll even just give you my personal email if they want to speak to me directly. It's McDermott, McDermott Max, at yahoo.com. But we also have, if you go to our website, unitedoptout.com, there's a place where you can get a newsletter and you can write us an email and things of that nature if you'd like to address the group in general. So
we'll be talking right here in Iowa on United Opt-Out's website. They have regional folks to help you through.
Yeah.
And so we'll be talking what is the process, what is the repercussion, why I need to consider doing this, and kind of give people more of the action items as well. Morna, thank you for staying with me, and we'll be right back after these messages. I am Tamara Scott. This is Truth for Your Time, Truth for Our Time, and we'll be right back.